So it's part 2 of lesson 1 of Project Studio. So we formed our teams. If you are not in class today, you've been assigned to a team, and I will reach out and connect you with your teammates by email. So the project. Let's talk about the project and how this works. So no, you probably don't get paid for the project, but what I've done, and I think I mentioned this in our previous class, is I always find a community partner. So a not-for-profit organization that needs a web application built, and they basically serve as our client. So we can look at a few of these. Won't necessarily go through all of them. So in 2013, our client was actually, yes, it is a real life project. So there is some bit of pressure here because, when in our last class, when you do those prototype presentations, there's going to be people in here that want to see what you're doing. Okay, so that's also part of that accountability piece. So in 2013, I guess they don't have this up anymore. We did a website for the nurse practitioner clinic. 2016, the project was actually featured on CTV News. Unfortunately, that site is no longer live because the client we did it for didn't want to pay to host it. 2018 was a cool project. So this one originally started out as this. Let's see if I can show you the prototype. Originally, this was designed in partnership with the Aurelia Food Bank. And the idea was it was a food sharing application so that places that had surplus food, like a grocery store, a restaurant, or perhaps even something like the college where they catered an event. The idea was if they had extra food, they could make it available to the food insecure in the community. Now, we've since adapted the project, and it's actually been taken up now by the Barrie Home Share organization, which is connecting older citizens with student volunteers. Now, their regular plan is to allow students to provide accommodation with an older member of the community in exchange for help around the house. With COVID, they're not doing the housing part right now, but what they are doing is still allowing for volunteers for help around the house. Yeah, Justin, exactly. That was the idea. So the idea is an older adult can say, I need help shoveling snow. Yeah, I know it was a great idea. And then the food bank decided to go in another direction after the students built this great application. I was really sad to see it. Because even here at the college, we have, we have staff meetings where they bring in food. And at the end of the meeting, 3/4 of the food is there. So through the map, the idea is we could say, hey, there's food on campus here, and you can come and claim it for people who need it. Anyway, it's turned into Barrie Home Share, where we're really matching student volunteers with older citizens who need help around their house. So this project actually sponsored by the city of Barrie. And the cool thing is, even though it was built as a student project in class, our client, which was actually the Georgian Center for Social Innovation, they actually came up with some funding. And so all the teams kind of do their own version of the same project. And at the end of the semester, our client decides which project they like the best. And now by this point, you finished your semester, students have graduated, most of you are graduating. But I try to encourage the clients to have some budget and hire the students who do the best version on contract to kind of take their prototype and polish it. So the guys who worked on this pilot back in 2018, they're actually getting paid by the Center for Social Innovation in partnership with the City of Barrie. And this project's actually going live this week. So there potentially is a chance to take this project at the end of the semester. Your team does a great job. And I've already made clear to our clients that that's what we're looking for. Ideally would be a budget. We've done it as well. We did a project years ago with the School of Engineering, where we built a web application for people who use the electric vehicle charging station outside of a building. That when users like Scott would plug in their electric vehicle, they would scan a QR code and it would track information about who was using the electric vehicle charging stations. And they also came up with some budget and paid some of the students when they graduated to take their prototype and make some changes, publish it, launch it. So there is that potential if you do a great job. Okay. So in class next week, our clients are going to be here. So we're going to have a client kickoff meeting. So you want to be in class. So I've invited them to come to class. So again, we've partnered with the Center for Social Innovation, and they're a great partner. They're here at the college. They do all kinds of work in the community. And a lot of those projects have a tech component, but they don't have any technical knowledge. So they plan things out, but they don't know how to implement them. So that's what we are going to do, is we're going to take their vision and build a web application. So when you guys do your design concepts, I will share those with our client, and that's one faculty member as well as a few students working on this. And then again, we're going to invite them to come back to our final class. So you want to have a good project because they're going to come here. You want to have something to show them and the potential to launch that project and get paid for it down the road. So I won't tell you a lot about the project. I will I'll let the client team tell you a bit next week, but I can share it briefly what it's about. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, Emily, do you have a specific question? Happy to go over anything or answer any questions.
So in regards of projects, next week the clients are going to come.
Yes.
And then they're going to say like, okay, I need this, and that. And then as a student, we can choose. And then in the end, they are going to take the most, let's say, for example, two groups work on the same project. So in the end, during the presentation, then the client choose which project or app they want.
That's correct. You got it exactly.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, one last question. So
Sure.
Is that going to be on, for example, Web Studio or something like that? Any specification?
We'll talk a bit more about the particulars of that, of like the technical part of it next week.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So this project, so our main contact, our faculty member who works at the Center for Social Innovation, his name's Quentin Evans. So Quentin's going to be joining us next week, along with a couple of other students who've worked on this project. So I will post this document to Blackboard, but I'll kind of give you a really high level overview, and then Quentin will be here next week to talk more about it and give you the specifics of what they're looking for. So this is a project called Man Up. So it started several years ago by some high school students, and it was basically about creating positive masculine principles in young men. Okay? So they want to encourage other men to adopt and replicate their program. So it's now been implemented very widely in the Ottawa area, and the Centre for Changemaking and Social Innovation, along with the Ontario Provincial Police, have been working to expand this pilot into the Simcoe County area. So the idea is to build a framework and infrastructure, ultimately to expand it all across the province. And really the goal is to help end domestic violence. So it's about empowering male students to redefine what it is to be a man. And it's also linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly gender equality, reducing inequalities, and having peaceful and strong institutions. So what they're looking for is to scale the project digitally across the province. And they don't really have much of a web presence other than a Facebook page and Instagram. Okay, so they have no way to reach other people who aren't using Facebook or Instagram. So there's a video here kind of explaining the awareness campaign that Georgian has already participated in. But what they really need is their own website. And that's what you guys are going to build together in your teams. So what they want is a one-stop digital site to grow and build its digital community. Okay, so this is kind of a high level. So some general content, discussion board, mental health tools and resources, community feed, social sharing, registering for events and training. So Quentin is going to be our primary client, but these are some of the other partners. So the Dean of the Aurelia campus, Steph Demek, the OPP headquarters in Aurelia, they have a representative involved in the project, as well as our mental health and well-being team here at the college, Jennifer Lloyd and Kate Henry, and the GCSA leadership in Aurelia. Right, so I'm going to post this. I'll post it into Blackboard for you under weekly learning and tools and resources so that you have access to this. And your teams will maybe want to read over the document, watch the intro video, have a look at their current Facebook page and social and Instagram in order that you can come kind of better prepared with some questions and ideas next week. So Quentin and a few of his social service work students are going to be here to kind of answer questions and go into some more specifics about what they're looking for. So this is typical when we get started on a project. We meet with our client. We ask them, hey, do you have any existing documentation that gives us some idea of what it is you need? So we'll often get this kind of a project brief if we're lucky. And then we sit down with the client and we talk about it. Well, what is it that you need? What's your vision? So I'll just move this up here to the top, near the top. So please have a look at that document with your team and come prepared with any questions for next week. So Quentin, they'll be here a few times through the semester. As I said, they'll be here next week and they'll definitely be here at the end of the semester. Okay, so here's your first team exercise. So I'm going to stop the recording and the sharing in a minute. I'm going to create breakout rooms and move you into your breakout rooms. You're going to do your first team challenge. So here's the challenge. Okay. I'm going to recommend in this class, particularly for your team discussions, you guys probably, when you're in breakout rooms, you definitely want to use your mics, okay, rather than just using the chat. You know each other well, so turn on your mics and have a discussion. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms in a minute. So here's your scenario. Okay. Person is standing on one side of a river, and they have a chicken, a fox, a bag of corn, and a rowboat. They need to safely transport all these items across the river in as few trips as possible. But there are some restrictions. Number one, the boat can only carry the person and one item at a time. Number two, you can't leave the fox and the chicken alone because the fox will eat the chicken. Number three, you can't leave the chicken and the bag of corn alone because the chicken will eat the corn. So as a team, you need to come up with a solution step by step. How do you get all three items safely across the river in as few steps as possible? Okay, so I'm going to give you a bit of time in your teams, probably about 10 minutes in your teams. You can let me know if you need more time. And I want you to try to come up with the best solution you can. Okay. It'll take me a minute to do the breakout rooms. So can I ask, a few of the groups came up with solutions. I know team 4 did and team 5. Team 1 and 2, did you manage to come up with a solution? Okay, you got it. Partly. Okay, so what's the solution? How did you solve it?
Hi, Professor.
Hi, Janelle. Why don't you tell us what your answer was? Go ahead.
So we can leave the fox and the corn together, but not chicken with any of them. So
Right. Whoop, you muted yourself.
Uh, first we'll get the chicken on the other side of the river.
Yep.
Then we'll get the fox on the other side, but get the chicken back to the first side. Then we'll get the corn on the other side of the river with the fox, and finally get the chicken on the other side. So all of them are together.
All right. Great answer. Thank you, Janelle. And I think most of the teams figured that out. So there's sort of one twist to that solution, right? What's the unconventional thinking you had to do in order to come up with that solution? I mean, most of those steps are fairly straightforward, but one of them is not obvious. Which step isn't obvious right away? Right, Emily. That you have to take the chicken back, right?
Yes.
So what's the lesson there? What's the takeaway in terms of solving a problem?
Buy a bigger boat.
You could try to buy a bigger boat if you had. And what if you couldn't buy a bigger boat? Yeah, think outside the box. Yep. Small steps before the big steps. Yeah, I think for me, Justin S., you hit on the big takeaway, right? Sometimes you've got to go backwards in order to go forwards, right? Progress isn't always linear. And if you think about that in terms of building an application, building a website, this is true, right? We might see things are working, we're building things, but then in order to add new things, sometimes we got to break things, right? It's an old expression. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. So our progress doesn't always look linear. Sometimes we've got to go backwards in order to progress. Okay? So think about how did it go in your team? This was your first exercise working, first of a lot of work you guys are going to do together as a team. How did it work? What was the dynamic like in terms of how you made a decision, or how did people participate, or who took a leadership role? What was that like in your team? Okay, yep. So you went to an outside resource. Yes, I should have banned Google. I did think of it. You could just look up the solution. I was hoping you went. What was it like with your team dynamic in terms of solving the problem? Okay. Everybody talked? Yep. So you tried to use the resources that were available to you. Yep. So, and I was really happy. I know it seems like since we've been online and using WebEx, a lot of people are reluctant to use their mics and prefer to use the chat. But I think in this class, I think actually talking to the people, it's just you're gonna get things done a lot more efficiently. And I mean, we're not strangers here, most of us, right? Most of us know each other well. And even for those of you who don't, if you're in class and using your mic and getting to know each other a little bit as people, I think that's a good thing, right? And when you have that, it is. People say online learning can be really isolating, and the chat is good. It's just not as personal. You don't hear people's tone of voice. You don't hear their intonation. And in the breakout sessions, I'd even encourage you a couple things. It won't require you, but I encourage you, use your cameras. Again, it's more personal. It'll create that real feeling like, hey, I'm not alone when you can see each other. You don't have to keep it on all class, but when you're with your team in your breakout sessions, that's a good idea. The other thing that I think I'm going to advise, especially because there are a few people in the class who are not in the cohort that started in September of 2019. Yeah, that's a good point, Hung. One thing we can do if you're not comfortable using a camera, or don't have one, is you can at least add a picture as your WebEx avatar. So I'm going to show you where to do that, and I'm going to strongly recommend that everybody at least, if you don't have your camera on, you at least put a photo of yourself on WebEx, and that's so your team members, we can at least see each other, even if it's just a static photo. But particularly for people who are kind of new to the group, that they get to know who their teammates are a little better. So I'm going to show you where in WebEx to go for that. I'll put the link in the chat, but basically, if you just go to the Georgian WebEx site in your browsers, you won't see it right now until you log back into WebEx. But if you go to georgiancollege.webex.com, you can modify your profile here and add a photo. So if you sign in with your Office 365 account, which is your college account, if you click on, once you log in, if you click on your name and go to your profile, you can click on your photo, and I'm going to encourage everybody to do this. Again, I can't require it, but I'd really encourage you to put in a photo here. It means the other instructors you have, some of whom you don't know and haven't met before, like you guys, I don't know that you know Jeremy, I don't think so. He'll at least, get to see a picture of you. If you walk by him in the summertime, you at least recognize who you are. And like I said, this is also going to help. Some of you are in teams with some team members who you don't really know. So it'll be good that we can see each other as people. So I'm going to strongly encourage you to at least add a real photo of yourself into your WebEx profile. I know I would prefer to be in a classroom with all of you. I'm disappointed we're not going to get that chance again. But the more we can do to humanize the WebEx room, I think the better learning experience we're going to have, and the more connected, the more trust you're going to have with each other in your teams. The treasure hunt. Which treasure hunt was that, Emily?
So you had like paper with instruction on stick on a wall or something?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you know what? This class kind of lends itself to those activities. So yes, I will try to do some of those little fun activities in this class, because, we're talking about stuff. Hopefully we'll get to do some of those kinds of things. So for sure, whatever we can do to make this kind of environment personal and make you feel like you're not just stuck alone, this class really lends itself to do that. There's a lot less of me talking and a lot more of us kind of having conversation together about things. I know, no kidding, Justin, but we're just gonna have to adapt and do the best we can. As long as hopefully we're all healthy and we can continue to learn and meet together this way. That's really the best we can do for now. So as I said, I'll strongly encourage you to update your WebEx profile, add your avatar. Hung, I don't think we can see it yet, but probably because you may have to leave and come back, because we're already in a WebEx session, so it may not update until you join your next WebEx session. But I know your other instructors, they're going to like it if they log into class for your next class. Like Jeremy logs in at noon and actually sees a picture of everybody. That'd be great. I know, Akash, I hear you. So like I said, we'll do the best we can to create a good community here. Okay, so that's it for this week, unless there's any further questions. Justin, I'm happy to stick around in the room and we can talk about your question. Yep, Hung, we see your avatar. We see you now. So remember, your team performance agreement is due next Monday at 9. If your team members weren't here, please encourage them to come next week because they want to be here for the client meeting, right? So they know, hey, what's this project all about? And you can ask questions. So that's all for today. I'm going to stop the recording and let you go. And I will see many of you at noon on Thursday for advanced server-side scripting. For those of you who I don't, have a great week, and I will see the rest of you Monday morning. Okay, I will stick around in the room. Justin, we can talk about your question. If anyone else has other questions, happy to hang out in the WebEx room for a little while. Other than that, enjoy your class with Jeremy, and I will see you Thursday or next Monday.